It is no secret that President Trump's been cracking down on immigration, and the wall is just the start of it. On top of that, and his decision to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, the Trump administration has also been phasing out another program known as TPS, or Temporary Protected Status, which is granted to foreign nationals seeking refuge in the U.S. because of violence or environmental disasters in their country of origin. This past Friday, we learned that status is being terminated for about 57,000 Hondurans. It's the sixth country to lose the status since the president took office. In all, there are about 1,400 Hondurans here in Massachusetts living under TPS. They've been here for nearly 20 years. Despite that, as of January 5th, 2020, they will be ordered to leave the country and return to a nation most observers say is still plagued with violence. Joining me are Boston City Councilor Lydia Edwards, who sponsored a resolution urging Congress to press Honduras on human rights violations, Jennifer Hernandez, an immigrant rights organizer at Centro Presente, and Oren Nimni from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice, which is challenging the Trump administration's move to end temporary protection for Hondurans. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Oren, let me start with you.
Sure.
This is not a new legal challenge. You've amended it to also advocate on behalf of Hondurans as well as Salvadorans and Haitians. What is the legal basis, in layperson-friendly terms, for the challenge that you guys are making?
Sure, and thanks for having me. Basically, what we challenged in our first lawsuit and now in this amendment is we've seen the pattern of racist and anti-immigration immigration policy from the Trump administration, and we think that TPS, the rescission of TPS for El Salvador and for Haiti and now for Honduras, is part and parcel of that long lineage of racist policy. So our lawsuit challenges the termination as a violation of equal protection, basically saying, look, you have the ability to make these immigration decisions. You have the discretion to do that, but you can't do it if it's done in a discriminatory way. And because of the policies that you've done and the statements that you've said, President Trump, we know that you are doing this in a discriminatory way, and so we're challenging it because of that.
And these would be statements like his alleged characterization of some countries that send immigrants to the United States as a term I can't say on air, but people can imagine blank hole countries, right?
Exactly.
Which I think the Trump administration has denied, he said, but that has been reported. What else?
Exactly. So our complaint goes through basically all of his statements from the campaign and during his presidency, where he's referred to Haitian immigrants specifically or Latino immigrants in general as disfavored classes and used a number of terms that I can't say on television.
Yep.
And so we go through step by step and show how those statements were made and how they've influenced his immigration policy going forward.
Jennifer, let me go to you. Can you describe for me, give me a sort of a miniature profile, and viewers also, of the Honduran community here in the Boston area? Where do they tend to live? What kind of professions do they tend to be involved in? Because I think, like a lot of people, I really know pretty much nothing about them.
Yeah. So the Honduran population here in Boston is around the 2,000 mark.
Oh, okay.
So it's low compared to other states, but they tend to live around Revere, Chelsea, East Boston, and they a lot of TPS workers, Hondurans included, tend to work in service work. So nursing, janitorial work, in schools, food service, a lot of construction. So a lot of jobs that are essential to the development of the city, the country, and a lot of the upkeeping of the great institutions we have here in the state.
And what were the conditions that originally led to them getting TPS? What was going on in Honduras that made the U.S. government take that
So
step?
for Honduras, it was Hurricane Mitch that was the reason why TPS was granted for this country in the early 2000s.
Lydia, let me go to you. I should refer to you as Councilor. I apologize. The Boston City Council weighed in pretty recently, right before the Trump administration said they were going to take this step, if I have my timing right. What did you guys do? What did you call on Congress to do exactly?
We called on Congress to pass or to acknowledge the human rights violations that are going on in Honduras and to support, I believe it's a bill named after Berta Cáceres. Cáceres, thank you, to make sure that we understand she is not only what she's done for Hondurans, but she herself died fighting for human rights there, and that we acknowledge that work and acknowledge what she's done, and then also make sure that this bill passes that is about human rights protections, acknowledging the election violations and violations of human rights, and that that the United States actually takes a role in acknowledging what is going on. I think if you do that, you can't then turn around and say that we can end TPS and say that it's safe to go back.
Tell me more about her story, because, again, I think this is going to be something that a lot of viewers, maybe not all, are unfamiliar with. So what is Berta's tale?
So Berta Cáceres was an environmentalist activist from Honduras who was pretty much fighting against large corporations that wanted to take over a river where she lived for hydroelectric companies. And she was killed because of this fight. And a lot of environmental activists are killed in Honduras due to their fight against large corporations.
So that is possibly a danger that some people would be faced with if they were repatriated. But there's also, Hurricane Mitch was the original catalyst.
Yes.
People who take on advocacy roles are threatened with violence and occasionally killed. What are other conditions currently existing in Honduras that would make really all three of you argue it's not safe for people to go back who've been here for 2 decades?
Yeah. Well, the amount of violence that a lot of people are experiencing with the fact that it's simply not a safe place to be, the recruitment of some gangs that are coming back from the United States, or in general just the drug war is still very much a real war on the streets for many people, that innocent people in many cases are caught up in this. There's a huge amount of corruption in the local police and law enforcement, so that not just people who are standing up for their rights, but people who just simply want to have a business feel that they have a sense of extortion, either from corruption and just outright criminal cartels, or sometimes the local police. It's a place where you simply can't plan almost a whole week without violence or seeing it, or your children having to experience it. And I think people don't understand the extremities that people are taking to get to the United States. It's because of what horrific things that they have to see to save their lives or their children's.
I have to ask you before I turn back to Oren, when the council took this up, I remember a long time ago at a different news organization covering it when the council delved into international affairs. And there was really sharp debate about should the Boston City Council be talking about issues abroad in whatever the country happened to be. Do you get any pushback from constituents saying, focus on local issues, why are you guys talking about Central American politics?
There were some people who certainly said that, and I made very clear, one, everything is local, and what the pain of my constituents, regardless of where that pain comes from, is my pain. My husband is an immigrant. My neighbors are immigrants, and so I am approached by everyone on the street by all different concerns, and one of the concerns that a large amount of my constituents have is about the TPS and their immigration status. And that's something that at the very minimal, even though I am a city councilor, I should be speaking in solidarity with my constituents.
Oren, let me get back to you for a second. Lydia and Jennifer have talked about conditions in Honduras today, which sound terrible. It doesn't make me want to go there, would not make me want to go back if I had left that country. But the name of the program that we're talking about is temporary protected status. And I'm guessing that we're going to have a few people watching who are going to be saying, well, wait a minute, they were originally given TPS, Hondurans, to come to the U.S. Because of Hurricane Mitch. Now, it may be, you describe it as almost a failed state, but this is supposed to be a temporary program. And 2 decades have passed. Surely, if it's not better by this point, it's not inappropriate to ask them to go back. What would your response to that be?
So we get that response all of the time. And the question isn't when is it going to be good. The question is, what does the government have to do? What do they have to look at when they're evaluating whether a country should have TPS? There's a protocol in the statute that gives TPS that says the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security must look at these factors to determine whether a country is able to receive returning immigrants back to that country. As you've heard, Honduras is in no position to receive returning immigrants, and so the skimpy reasons that the Department of Homeland Security has given are clear pretext for what their racist anti-immigrant agenda has been.
And let me ask you, if I understand your lawsuit correctly, you also say that the Trump administration is treating TPS in a different way than past administrations, right? It used to be that if there was one event that led to the receipt of TPS status, if other things changed that made it unsafe to go back, those would be taken into account. Now they're saying, no, it's just about the original event. Right?
That's correct, which is a ridiculous way to apply the program. The program isn't about a particular event. It's whether or not a country can actually accept back people, physical people who are living here. And if you take it in that sense, it matters whether there's continuing political violence. It matters whether there's been hurricanes since Hurricane Mitch, which there have been. It matters whether there's high income inequality or political infrastructure or social infrastructure.
Not just whether 2 decades have passed.
Exactly. And there's no real way to even evaluate whether or not all of the conditions from Hurricane Mitch have been repaired because so many things have happened in the interim. Every other administration, both Democrat and Republican, have understood this until this administration.
Jennifer Hernandez, what are you at Centro Presente hearing from Hondurans in the community you work with? What are they asking you or telling you as this plays out?
So these are people, of course, that if they have TPS from Honduras, of course, have been living in this country for, a lot of them, over 20 years, right? Have bought houses, have cars, have kids, have families who are going to high school, who grew up here, who are part of the communities. And a lot of them are saying, you know, we can't go back. If we go back, we are going to die. So we have to fight, and you know, this isn't an option. Going back is not an option because I can't take my kids to this country that will surely destroy them if we go back.
So are they still hoping that the advocacy that Oren and others are engaged in, and you're part of this suit as well, I should say, right?
Yes, so Centro Presente is...
Yeah, so they're hoping that the advocacy has the intended effect.
So we're hoping that the advocacy has the intended effect, but also that there's a more permanent solution, right? That there's a residency for these people that are part of this country, that have been part of this country for over 20 years, a lot of them, and that Congress actually does something.
Councilor Edwards, I got to give the last word to you. Mayor Walsh famously said earlier on in the Trump administration that if it reached a point where individuals in Boston were facing deportation, that he would welcome them sheltering in City Hall. I think he said in his office. Do you think that it is possible that it will come to that point for Hondurans, for people from El Salvador and Haiti, and maybe for other people as well?
I believe it's come to that point. There are churches who are sheltering in immigrants right now, where they have simply said, this is a house of God and all are welcome, and we're not going to define a human being or their importance or their status based off of a piece of paper from the U.S. government. And so I want people to be really very aware. We are at that point right now where we are separating families, people who have not committed a crime, who have actually who have contributed greatly to their communities based off of this. So I understand people focus on the mayor's comment, and many people have there's been a great deal of backlash for that. And we keep seeing that as a future event. It's right now, and we really need to act.
All right, Councilor Lydia Edwards, Jennifer Hernandez, Oren Nimni, thank you all for being here.
Thank you.